Okay, thank you for tuning in to podcast number two. This was supposed to be about my agenda and some of my agenda items that I was going to go over, but instead, podcast number two will focus on allegations that Preston Smith has said about me and my responses to those, which is this is obviously a podcast that I never intended doing, and it's unfortunate that I have to do it. But without further ado, that is the topic of the podcast today, and so let's get started. As you can see, I filed on February the 24th. I wanted to make sure I had everything in order before I went downtown to the courthouse. It was actually a snowy Thursday that I drove down there. This made me the second Republican on the ballot, obviously, both Preston and myself. And as you can see here, things have changed somewhat, but it just proves what I'm going to be going over here in this video. My first impression of Preston was actually pretty good. I knew that we had quite a few mutual friends, and I thought, maybe there was even a chance that we would become friends after the election. I knew that it was just going to be a new experience for me, and I really wasn't sure what to expect. I reached out to one of our mutual acquaintances, just kind of curious, testing the waters, ultimately what Preston was thinking, and hoping that he wasn't angry that I ultimately ran after him and against him. So, what I found out ultimately is that Preston does not believe in the more the merrier, if they are opposing him anyway. And I knew the city election was coming up in April, and I figured that this would actually be a little bit of a down period, if you could call it that. And the primary election wasn't really coming up until August the 2nd anyway. So, I had my guard down. I was working on my campaign, planning things, and so forth. And I was just excited, for the opportunity and, excited because, again, this is my first venture into things like this. I'm not a lifelong politician. I mean, this is new to me, as it would be to a lot of people that have never done anything like this. Now, I didn't know enough about the issues in the past to really be involved. I mean, I would rather have a non-voter than somebody just being told who to vote for or vote for somebody for other reasons. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of politics. I mean, I hate the word. I honestly hate the word. I hate it whenever people say that's what I'm doing now. I honestly feel like politics has such a terrible reputation, and a lot of the things that I'm going to mention in this video I feel are 100% the reason for that. So little did I know during this down period, if you could call it that, Preston began his plan of lying about me and lying to his followers and actually trying to get me kicked off the ballot altogether because I was not actively involved in voting and politics, I guess, my entire life or whatever his requirement is. And so that process had already begun. I just didn't realize it at the time. Unfortunately, there are some of his followers that don't research the information or just don't care, and they just repeat, kind of like parrots, the information that he's providing, even if it's obviously a lie. He likes to use the word rhino, and I'll just use the word parrot because that's just what it reminds me of. And when Teresa Galvin entered the race on March 28th is whenever this became even more apparent. This is what one of his followers in one of the Facebook groups posted shortly after she ran. As you can see, the information is false. It was false ever since February the 24th when I entered, but this was just essentially repeating what Preston had already put on his website and his Facebook. And I just think it's distasteful to not only lie, but then to ask for money on top of that. I just can't get over that. Again, this is why people don't vote in elections and why people don't want to get involved in politics. Anyone that checked the Jackson County Clerk's website would know that this is not a true statement. However, it seems like Preston and his supporters prey on those that he believes will either willingly spread his lies or just not read between the lines or research. Even the other competitor, Teresa Galvin, attempted to restore some truth to the discussion, which was followed up by a lot of lies by Preston himself. I've actually underlined the lies in red. What's ironic to me is he's trying to get me kicked off the ballot, but yet he's dragging all these other political organizations and quoting them as saying things that they actually did not say. To me, I would think that that would be more grounds for getting kicked off the ballot. There's really nothing new about what he is saying. These are things that I have admitted from day one. So, what actually changed? Well, my desire to make change. I knew that I needed to get involved, and I felt that I could actually make a difference. And to make a difference, I knew that I needed to get out, vote more, just do a lot of things that I had been failing to do in the past. And that is ultimately what I started doing. I'm really surprised by a lot of people that I talk to that, I'm good friends with, even, that do not know what the Jackson County Executive is or what they do. I have people come up to me, good luck on that whole city thing that you're doing and all that. It is not unusual for somebody to not dedicate their life to politics. We have a lot of people that truly do not know what's going on and they're not involved in it, but because it involves politics, they just distance themselves from that at all. And why do you think that is? Crap like this. This is the exact nonsense that people try to avoid, and that ultimately people said that I was getting into whenever I chose to become county executive. And I actually didn't think I was. First of all, it's too early in the process. I just figured that no one would be desperate enough to start a grudge with little old me, someone who's never done any of this before. Of course, that's the issue, I guess, that he has. But again, he's going to point at Teresa Galvin that she's a politician. So the issue is that I've not been a politician, and the issue will be that she is a politician. And so, which one is it? Who knows? As important as voting might be, or as he called Civics 101, I have to say that filling in a little circle on the voting ballot has nothing to do with making a difference as a county executive. Experience in what a lot of the issues are, which I am, and he is not, that is one thing that helps. But I mean, it has nothing to do with whether or not you can do a lot of the things that he is saying that you would have to do or not have the knowledge to do, like running a budget, for example, he said, or fixing whatever issues are the issues. Voting doesn't have anything to do with that. Now, it's good to vote. I mean, don't get me wrong, but how many years does it take to actually be a voter to be qualified to be county executive in his mind? I mean, when do you gain that knowledge? 3, 4, 5 years of voting? Are you suddenly qualified? It just doesn't make any sense. And let's face it, Preston is a guy that is used to getting his own way. And when he doesn't, he makes everybody's life a living hell. I mean, that's just how he is. He whines and complains about virtually everything that happens that he does not want to happen, and then he lies about it in an effort to change it. That is how he is promoting his change. And unfortunately, again, some of his followers continue to spread that, and that's where we run into even more problems. To this day, he is still trying to get me kicked off the ballot, even though there are now 3 of us now. I guess maybe just out of spite. I'm not really sure what the objective is at this moment. But I mean, how do you define insecurity? I mean, I feel like I am a good example to all those out there that do not vote. And he is basically saying that if you do not vote, you can't make everyday decisions and make actually good decisions just because you don't vote. Again, that doesn't make any sense to me. Voting is important. We know that. It's Civics 101, but that doesn't mean that you can't make decisions. Sometimes people decide not to vote because they just don't know enough about it. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why people might not be voting all the time. That's just the way life is. And I feel like this is kind of the calling card to those that actually aren't involved in politics, or those that aren't usually voters, or that may not have voted this time around, to get out and vote, because the more people that we have informed about what's going on, then he's not going to win. I mean, it's just that simple, and he knows that. Another thing that he likes to do to attempt to really brainwash the public is that he has formed a group that meets periodically in the area. And the group claims to be open to everybody. In fact, I joined thinking, hey, group, it's a great idea. And I mean, it definitely is a great idea. I mean, to exchange ideas about how to make things better. I mean, it's no more than, somebody, or no different than somebody coming to you off the street, a taxpayer, citizen, or whatever, giving you a suggestion as to how to make Jackson County better. I mean, that's always important feedback to get, and to get as many people together that can do that, that sounds great. But, however, I mean, his group is not actually managed like a group at all. The group's Facebook, which he is the moderator of, claims they are open to anybody, but there are a few rules. I mean, you can't mention anybody he's running against, and you have to support him. Otherwise, you're really not welcome at all. And the group does not allow people to post, and often comments are edited or deleted altogether. He supposedly speaks for the citizens, but yet he gets nervous when they try to speak for themselves. And he also runs one of these groups on the Nextdoor network, the Nextdoor social network, which a couple of users have actually reached out to me directly about. And here is actually one example. And this was actually one of the first clues that I received, that maybe he wasn't actually going to be an adult about any of this. Because, I mean, this was very early on. I mean, we were in, maybe mid-March or so at this point. I mean, it was not long into things at all. And this person actually ended up volunteering, on my website. And so I guess I can thank Preston for that. And so when Teresa Galvin entered on March 28th, Preston put on his website, along with his Facebook, basically the same lies that he had already been spreading. And so, I mean, Patriot Preston spreading more lies and not acknowledging the fact that I was even on the ballot. I guess he was thinking that his strategy was successful, or he was just blatantly lying. Who actually knows which one it was? But nonetheless, this is what he posted on both his website and his Facebook. And this podcast does not come without a little bit of humor. So, guess who Preston Smith posted that his group supports? Yep, you guessed it. Preston Smith. What a surprise. So he's virtually a tribute to himself, and he really doesn't even try to hide it, but in fact relies on people that either just don't know any better, don't do any research, or just don't care. The group often has other politicians vowing for other political spots, and they all openly support each other like the buddy system. And it's up to you to find out who these folks are and if you want to support them. I do not know any of them personally, obviously, and some of them may even agree with some of the things that I am saying. And I just want to emphasize the fact that, I don't want to pick on groups in general, or any of the groups that meet. It really has nothing to do with that. It's just that this particular group just seems a little bit dishonest. And if there's really anything that I can't stand, it's a liar. And I apologize, I keep putting on the hoodie, taking the hoodie off, so it looks like I'm doing this all over different days, and I'm really not. But I guess really what's mind-boggling is who your opponents actually are. That has to be the most elemental thing that you can choose to be non-truthful about. I mean, you really have to think people are dumb to actually spread information about who is on the ballot. That's just, you never see that. That just dumbfounds me. So he has openly lied, obviously, and he hosts groups that you can only be for him, and then he calls himself a patriot, and he thinks that this is exactly what Jackson County needs as a Jackson County executive. I just don't see how that's going to be any improvement at all. In fact, That kind of stuff is the reason why I left Jackson County to begin with, as an employee, I should say. I did not mean to rain on his retirement parade, because I mean, that's probably what he would do after a tenure as Jackson County executive anyway. I mean, he keeps referencing my age and all that, which I'm 39, but I was not born yesterday. So, I mean, I don't, at this point, I can't believe anything that he says. I mean, really, ever again. I mean, that bridge has been downed a long time ago now. So, I don't see how anybody can trust him given that he operates in this way. And it just, he does have some supporters out there, but I mean, again, he's not the favorite to win. And I guess this is just what a desperate man does. And I mean, honestly, to me, I mean, first impressions aside, he seems like a bully. I mean, he really does. He seems like a bully. And that's really sad. And I'm not going to lie to you here. I mean, I have nothing to lie to you. I mean, there's no reason I'm going to lie to you here. I know that I am an underdog as well in this race, and the truth is all I feel like I have sometimes. I mean, because I know I'm up against a lot, and I mean, again, as I mentioned in my first podcast, I have a full-time job that I have to attend to. And so, I mean, I'm not going to do a podcast where I tell nothing but lies. I mean, I would never, and if I ever do say anything that ends up not being truthful, I will, broadcast that. I will apologize because that's just not the way that I am. I have to look at myself in the mirror occasionally, at least, and, I have to sleep at night. And so, I mean, if there's one thing that you're going to get on my podcast, it's going to be the truth. And with that said, now we're going to go into some of the responses because I did finally call him out on some of this stuff. Because again, these posts were brought to my attention more so than I actually noticed them. Because in this particular group that these took place on, I signed it up for the group probably like around April 11th, 12th, 13th, somewhere around there. So a lot of this stuff started in late March. And so whenever I signed onto the group, I was a little bit oblivious to it all. And so there was a delayed response, but I did eventually give a response, and that's what I'm going to go over with next. So as you can see, my initial response basically just asked him, if you're telling nothing but the truth, and everybody said that oh yeah, it's a done deal, I'm kicked off, blah blah blah, then why am I still here? And he didn't really answer that question, but he just then again brought up my age and then said another lie, and that the Republican committee had voted to try to determine whether or not I was a Democrat or Republican. Again, I mean, just honestly, just a bully. I mean, I guess just since I'm new at this, just trying to scare me, I guess. I mean, that's the best explanation I can think of. And I actually gave him a pretty harsh response, I will admit. I even felt a little bit guilty after the fact. I mean, honestly, I'm not used to, saying like things like this to people. And, I really do believe in respecting your elders. I mean, it's not. I mean, this really shouldn't even be happening right now. I mean, we're in the same party. It just, this is stupid, honestly. But I'm definitely wanted to give him my responses, let people know that, he is not telling the truth. And, of course, then he, brings up again the same single thing that he keeps mentioning. And I guess, he says he's not desperate, and I don't understand why you would come to any other conclusion. But I mean, again, voting is pretty much everything to him. And I mean, props for voting, but I mean, again, the best Jackson County executive doesn't mean that they voted all their life. That has nothing to do with doing the job well, making changes. In fact, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I ran, because I felt like everybody that typically runs is what, a judge, retired judge, whatever, which is what Preston Smith is. You've got attorneys often, Other politicians. I'm none of those. But again, he's holding that against me, but yet he says that he's so different from the rest. I just find that interesting. And of course, there's a lot of allegations that have been made. So I'm going to go over some of the other lies now that I have actually heard, since everything has started from at least one source. The fact that I was picked to run against him as a conspiracy against him, I have heard various people pick me, from Frank White, which he made a post about not long ago on his own group dedicated to himself. Teresa Galvin handpicked me, is what he has also said. Again, you can ask anybody that I worked with at the county if I knew Teresa Galvin or ever went to lunch with Teresa Galvin or anything like that. The truth isn't really that hard to find there. Um, of course, then the fact that she later joined then kind of changed the allegation to, well, I just joined to split the votes between him and I. And now he's hinting that Teresa is actually helping with my campaign. One of the messages I posted earlier, asked, well, who helped you type that message? Most likely hinting, I'm assuming that it was probably her. Who knows? Maybe he thinks Frank White and me are at a laptop somewhere, typing it or whatever. I've noticed a lot of his supporters do reference things like that as well, and they'll put things like "I smell a rat" or things of that nature, which they're just kind of beating into what he is telling them. Things of that nature. And of course, this was the post that I was referencing, which he basically said that I was put in there to as a placeholder, which is interesting. And of course, this is where he, alleges that, that I was, in it for other reasons or whatever, and paid for by Jackson County. Oh, that would be nice. Anyway, but it would be nice if, I was paid for something, because, just dealing with this, I kind of feel like I'm dealing with something I shouldn't be. But again, the allegations are never going to stop. The things against me are never going to stop. None of this is probably ever going to stop. This is just a pattern of behavior that he likes. And here's really what I'm going to. I'm just going to end this with just two truthful statements here. A lot of these allegations and things that he's making up, you could walk into either one of the courthouses again and ask people. There are still plenty of people at both courthouses that I worked with. And you could ask any of these to any of them. And I'm sure that they would not be shy in telling you. And the other is that actually two of our mutual friends were actually very persuasive in my decision and very encouraged by my decision to run or put my name in for county executive, and been very supportive. And he just assumes that everybody is for him, and that's not always necessarily true. That's all I have to say. I don't plan on really discussing him any further. I've already dedicated way too much of my life to this, and I just would like to start planning the campaign or continue to plan the campaign and let the citizens decide. But let's at least try to keep as much of the information true as possible so the citizens can actually vote for somebody that they feel would do a good job based on facts.